All right, the next story is a bit of a bizarre one. I can't understand it. I'd love someone to explain it to me, but Matt Lodge given a release from the Warriors, but fully paid out for the rest of this season, the rest of next year. It doesn't add up to me. What's happened here?
Well, I've been chasing this story all day, and it still remains a $700,000 question mark. That was the size of his Golden Handshake. Now, if any football player walks into his employer or any employer and says, look, I've had enough, for personal reasons, I don't want to move my family to New Zealand, you say, OK, fine, that's the end of the contract. But for some reason, and the chief executive of the Warriors, Campbell George, won't explain it to me. I've texted him, I've rung him. He's hiding behind confidentiality clauses. But there's a lot of fans in New Zealand wanting to know why he got $700,000. Kenny, it ruins their cap for the remainder of this year and next year.
Well, that's the thing. It does go on their cap, regardless of the fact whether he's there or not. Second to that, though, you've got to ask, the fact that the payout in Lodge's favour suggests that Lodge has done nothing wrong. But the fact that the club won't give any details about why that they chose to release him immediately and pay him out, I think at the very least the integrity unit needs to have a look at it.
Well, did you say the NRL were going to go and look at it?
I spoke to Andrew Abdo today, and he has spoken to his salary cap auditors, and they are going to have a look at it. Not that they're suggesting any...
It's not just salary cap auditors.
Yeah.
It's got to, something has happened. Something has happened to cause a fracture here. Now, Lodge has said he didn't want to go back to New Zealand, OK? That's what his public comment has been. But your point, you don't say that and then they say, well, OK, we'll just pay you out $700,000. Something has happened to make the Warriors feel obligated to release him and pay him out.
It's not so long ago they offered him an extension, a 3-year extension, and he knocked it back. So clearly they wanted him to hang around at some point.
If a player goes in and asks for a release and it's on their terms because they don't want to go to New Zealand, they don't get, what, 95% of the payout or close to 100%? No. You don't even get close to that.
But if they're trying to offload him to another club, they'll contribute part of that salary
that's the other part
to a new club. Now, he has left the Warriors in desperate trouble with Adam Fanua-Blake out for up to 4 weeks with a foot injury. Lodge is not there. Nathan Brown's desperate. They've won 1 out of 5. They're desperate for victory. And the Warriors, I think, are of the belief they're here in Redcliffe. Their fans are back home in New Zealand. The outrage isn't going to be as bad as it might possibly have been. But those fans, those members, those sponsors deserve an explanation. $700,000.
They need it from a football point of view to know why $700,000 is not going to be in their cap next year because the club elected to let a player go. They didn't even take him to market and try and sell him to somebody who would pick up part of the payment. They've released him immediately.
Do you think they've done it in a way because, and this is not explaining it, but perhaps they thought because it's Matt Lodge, because it's a guy who's got a colourful background that some people and clubs will be happy to not see him at, that the fans are willing to wipe their hands of it and go...
But he wasn't playing poor.
No, I agree. I'm not saying that, Buzz. Not he's been outstanding. He's been one of the best players.
The worst thing he's done all year is take a dive in that game against Canberra.
I'll tell you what, for any club now, he's an amazingly attractive proposition because the Warriors have chucked in most of his money this year, most of his money next year.
You get him dirt cheap. You'll get him.
Exactly. You get him for nothing.
Kenny, why would he sign for the Warriors if he didn't want to live in New Zealand?
Oh, that's an unusual one, bro. I don't know the answer to that. Look, when he did go to the Warriors...
Surely when you sign a contract for the New Zealand Warriors, and we've heard it with other players there, you got to expect that at some stage you got to live in New Zealand.
He did sign during COVID when the Warriors were based in Queensland. Second to that, he was being pushed out the door at the Broncos, and there's every chance that was basically the only lifeline that was there for him, so he took that. Now, whether there's other clubs there, I don't know, but given the fact, as I said, basically a packet of biscuits you'll get him because he's getting paid $700 by the Warriors.
And his circumstances have changed a little bit since then. He's got a really young family. I think he's had another child since he left the Broncos.
He only signed in July 21. That's not even 12 months ago.
He's still had another child in that time, I'm not saying.
Yeah, but it's not
there's lots of players that have kids in our game and got young families, and that's all a part of it. You're earning good money. It's New Zealand. It's not Europe.
Well, they paid him.
I know.
So it doesn't matter.
Lucky him. He's won the lotto. Honestly,
he's flying.
He's
Well, he is. I looked at property records today. There was talk he'd bought in Bayview, but he has. And he's paid $2.5 million for a house.
You're right.
You're the best.
Well, he has.
You're real
I've got
estate
Johnny
agent.
Chancellor, our property right, to have a look up for me.
You'll
He's
find
picking-
anything.
Well, it's out for rent now. He's getting rent.
Look,
He got a good payout from the Broncos. They got a
let's
big
be clear
payout.
here. Lodge has done nothing wrong. Okay,
course
there's
he
no
hasn't.
suggestion he's done anything wrong. But you've still got to ask why what does the club fear to allow him to go to still wear his salary on their cap, to let him go paid it out in full, to let him now go straight to market where every other team already knows he's getting the full payout from the Warriors. It does not make sense.
It doesn't add up.
And it appears that something has happened at the club rather than with Lodge.
Well, clearly it has, because if it was an issue that Lodgy had had, they wouldn't have had to. They wouldn't have paid him out, would
Exactly,
they? So
that's
it's
the
clearly
point.
the other side. It's clearly come from the other side. So
It looks like guilt money from the club.
Yeah.
The interesting thing
and
is...
integrity unit should be looking at it.
He's not going to Manly. He's bought in Bayview, but he's not going to Manly. Scott Fulton, head of recruitment, told me today they're not interested in him.
Is it
Any other clubs?
Street of Spud?
Any other clubs interested that we know yet? I know it's early doors, but
I don't think they're jumping out.
I think he wants to take his time, to be honest. I think he wants to make sure he goes to the right club, a club that can win a comp. I think that's his priority at the moment, somewhere where he can enjoy his footy. Now, obviously that relies on the club accommodating him, so I think we'll have to see how it pans out. But Buzz right, he's played really good football this year for them. And I think at times Lodgy pays a little bit for his past.
yeah.
If it's based purely on football, then there should be some clubs queuing up to sign him.
He'll have them all chasing. He'll have a lot of clubs after him. He's a quality player.